What's happening, guys? Hope everybody's doing well. So, doing our live again. Sorry about yesterday or Tuesday. Was in a lesson, had a lesson reschedule. So, had to do the day job before I hopped on YouTube. So, apologies on that front. So, today, talking wrist stuff and what you can look for as far as wrist conditions, right? So one of the questions came in asking about trail wrist position. So your right hand, what it should look like, what it should do. And I think it kind of depends on a couple of different factors, right? You guys know me at this point. I'm not just going to give blanket statement fixes and this is the end all be all stuff and go down that rabbit hole. But what I would say is like when we look at lead wrist and trail wrist, there's matchups, like I've said before, and we can talk about what those positions will look like as you get to the top and how you'll see it alter what happens next, right? So let's just kind of talk about it today, and this is what we'll cover in our topic. So let me get a golf ball, and we'll talk about this. A couple of things to keep in mind when you make changes, right? You have to do it with a purpose, and if you're going to change your wrist position stuff, one of the big things I like to tell people is like it depends on how you act on the golf club. So like a lesson I had this morning, he pulls really hard in a straight line in that manner. And so for him, we got to get the golf club more like Jon Rahm, Finau, DJ, kind of laid off and shut, because he's not really awesome at like throwing his hands at the bottom. And he also pulls on it really hard to start with, right? So think of it this way, okay? And this will lead into the trail wrist stuff. Where I was going with that is like sometimes players do better with the club across the line, i.e. Phil Mickelson, John Daly, some Bubba, maybe a little bit, right? But they get it across the line because they don't really like pull on the golf club really hard with their arms. They're kind of lazy with it early, and it kind of falls into place, and then they kind of get it going with the hands at the bottom, right? Well, when a player that pulls on it really hard gets up to the top and he's across the line and he pulls on it, that creates a really steep inner move, right? And that shaft gets pretty vertical and pretty upright. And so if you see that move in your golf swing and you see that you're across the line at the top, maybe take the effort to try to see what happens if the golf club got behind you in a more laid off position as you start to pull on it, because that's going to create more rotation. So if you think about it, I'm pulling in a straight line going this way, right? So if I create that pull, I go up to the top, pull it out in front of me, make my delivery. If I'm across the line, I'm going to pull it behind me and get stuck, right? And so where this marries into a wrist position equation, right? Where this goes into a wrist position thing is when you get up to the top, a lot of people want to see the cup right hand and the bowed left hand, right? And that's not necessarily the end-all position. That was just a fad thing, I think, right? It got sexy because of Dustin Johnson back early in the 15-14 era. And, a lot of people went that way. Now, what I'll say is if you have a flex left hand and a cupped right hand, ball flights are typically straighter for sure, but they don't go as far, right? There's a lot of good golfers that get out there and had a cupped left hand at the top and a stronger right hand at the top that were good with their hands at the bottom, and they hit it farther. So, again, not advocating a cup left wrist, not advocating a flex left wrist, just telling you what I've seen, right? So, anyways, back to the point is typically the player that gets it across the line, so over your head, they're going to have a cup left hand and a flat right hand, right? Or maybe even a bowed right hand, okay? The player that gets it laid off at the top, they're typically going to be flexed with the left, cupped with the right. The reason for that being is because you don't see a lot of players have a flexed left hand, cupped right hand, twisted across the line, because it's going to start to look like this. And then conversely, you can see it, you don't see it a whole lot. You don't see a lot of people doing this where the left hand's cupped and the right hand's under, because that feels pretty dang weak too. It's just the mass is too far away from me now. It doesn't get loaded up on top of my hands enough. So where this is going is if you're wanting a more laid off position, you're going to find yourself with a more cupped right hand, more flexed left hand. It'll stay that way coming down. and then it'll throw at the bottom, right? If you play it more across the line, you'll have a more cupped left hand, stronger right hand. You'll probably rotate and be kind of lazy with your arms to start. The club face will fall back behind you, be a little open, and you'll start rotating that release more into the bottom. Hopefully it's not this way. Could be. But if it's a rolly one, that's fine. Okay? And so that just depends on the player. It depends on how you act on the golf club and how, where your strength draws from, right? So one of the simple ways to kind of figure out what works best for you, right, is when you get into that takeaway, right, load up that right hand first from a down the line hinge. Take it up to the top. You'll feel your right hand be more cupped, left hand be more bowed, right? You can kind of do a freezer if you want, or you can just kind of keep it into like a 3/4 swing. Get your hit, right? See how that kind of feels. Maybe it doesn't feel super awesome. Then the opposite would be hinging it more in front, because that's going to produce a more cupped left hand. Get it more in front. Kind of get the same little turn. You'll feel that little steepness. Let your hands kind of work through the shot, and maybe that feels a little bit better, right? So the hinge position hinges from straight to in front of you to down the line and anywhere in between. You got 90 degrees of it, right? So you can kind of do whatever you want. And so when you get up in there, just remember that the guy who hinges this way, when they rotate, is going to put it more across the line. Should be a little handsier at the bottom. The person who goes this way is going to get a little more laid off, but be better with the body. One requires less usage of the hands at the bottom. The other does. Both are right. Both have won on TV. Got to make a dealer's choice at that scenario, right? So hopefully some of this information has helped with regard to risk conditions, right? Again, apologies on not being around on Tuesday, but we'll upload this video for you guys to watch later on. If you have any questions, send them my way. Otherwise, we'll wrap this baby up and hopefully explaining the trail risk being cupped and flexed is more of a laid off shut face position that doesn't really end up across the line very often. To the opposite, player who gets it across the line typically has more of a cupped left wrist, flexed right hand, and tends to use more hands at the bottom. So with that, Coach Matt is out. Have a wonderful weekend. Starting to warm up. Our grass is starting to pop. We'll probably be green in a couple weeks. We'll be outside when those start happening. The golf score starts looking good. Till then, have a great weekend and play a lot of golf. See you later.